The bold and the beautiful has never pretended that peace is permanent, especially when that peace is forged between two women whose lives, identities, and legacies have been defined by rivalry, pride, and unresolved resentment. From the very beginning, the so-called ceasefire between Steffy Forrester and Hope Logan carried the unmistakable scent of inevitability, as if everyone involved understood that it was less a resolution and more a temporary suspension of open warfare. Viewers expected the truce to collapse over a man, a runway, or a corporate power play, because that is how conflicts between Steffy and Hope have always reignited in the past. What no one fully anticipated was how deeply personal, how emotionally combustible, and how morally ambiguous the next rupture would become, nor how quickly it would escalate from cold hostility into explicit threat. The fragile balance between Steffy and Hope begins to crack the moment professional authority intersects with private emotion. Weeks earlier, Steffy's decision to fire Deke Sharp from Forrester Creations was not merely a corporate move, it was a declaration of dominance. On paper, the dismissal could be justified through the language of restructuring, performance, or brand direction, but everyone involved understood the subtext. Deke was not just an employee. He was Hope's brother, a symbol of her family's presence within the Forrester empire, and by removing him, Steffy sent a clear message about who ultimately holds power. Hope's reaction was not explosive, but the hurt ran deep. She absorbed the blow with outward restraint, yet inwardly it reignited old insecurities about her place within a company that has always felt one boardroom vote away from rejecting her entirely. From that moment on, every interaction between Steffy and Hope carries an undercurrent of mutual suspicion. The truce remains intact in form, but not in spirit. Polite conversations mask simmering resentment, and every professional discussion feels like a chess move rather than collaboration. It is in this already volatile atmosphere that news begins to spread about the unexpected romance blossoming between Taylor Hayes and Deacon Sharp, a revelation that transforms personal discomfort into existential threat for Steffy. For her, this is not simply about who her mother chooses to love, it is about safety, history, and the haunting shadow of danger that has never truly left her family. Steffy's anger does not erupt instantly. At first, it manifests as denial, a refusal to believe that Taylor would willingly entangle herself with a man whose past is inseparable from chaos and risk. Steffy's life has been shaped by trauma inflicted by people who entered her family under the guise of love and reform, only to bring devastation in their wake. Deacon's history, complicated and morally checkered, triggers those memories whether she wants it to or not. To Steffy, this relationship feels less like romance and more like a ticking time bomb, one that threatens to expose her mother to danger she believes Taylor has earned the right to leave behind. The situation becomes unbearable when Steffy learns that Hope and Deke are not merely tolerating this relationship, but actively encouraging it. In Steffy's eyes, this crosses a line that cannot be rationalized away. What she interprets is not support for love, but reckless disregard for consequences. The idea that Hope, of all people, would endorse a relationship that Steffy views as hazardous feels like betrayal layered upon betrayal. It feeds into Steffy's long-standing belief that Hope's moral certainty often blinds her to the real-world fallout of her choices, that Hope believes goodness alone can neutralize danger. Meanwhile, Hope's motivations are far more complex than Steffy allows herself to see. Hope does not act as a matchmaker out of defiance or spite. Her encouragement of Taylor and Deacon stems from a belief in growth, accountability, and the possibility of redemption. Hope has always defined herself through faith in human change, often to her own detriment. Supporting her father's happiness is, to her, an act of love rather than provocation. Deke, standing beside his sister, sees this as an opportunity for healing, a chance for two adults burdened by painful histories to find comfort and understanding with one another. Neither Hope nor Deke intend to threaten Steffy, yet intent does not erase impact. As Steffy's fear hardens into fury, the truce with Hope becomes unsustainable. She does not merely withdraw cooperation, she prepares to strike. The ceasefire ends not with a dramatic argument, but with a calculated shift in power. Steffy understands that her greatest leverage lies not in emotion, but in authority. As a leader at Forrester Creations, she possesses the ability to reshape careers, shatter dreams, and redefine futures with a single decision. Hope's professional identity is deeply tied to the revival of hope for the future, a line that represents not just creative expression, but validation. Its success is Hope's proof that she belongs, that her vision matters. The threat Steffy issues against Hope and Deke is therefore chilling in its precision. It is not shouted, it is implied. The possibility that hope for the future could be closed, that Hope herself could be dismissed just as her brother was, hangs heavily between them. This is not simply retaliation, it is coercion. Steffy positions herself as protector and enforcer, framing her actions as necessary measures to safeguard her family, particularly her mother. In her mind, using corporate power to neutralize what she perceives as a threat is not abuse of authority, but responsible leadership. Hope's reaction to this threat is layered with disbelief, fear, and a profound sense of injustice. She has poured herself into rebuilding her line, into proving that she can stand on her own within a company historically dominated by the Forresters. To have that hard-won progress weaponized against her feels like confirmation of her worst fears, that her place at Forrester Creations is conditional, fragile, and forever subject to Steffy's approval. Yet Hope is not without agency. Beneath her shock lies resolve. She understands that yielding now would mean surrendering not just her job, but her principles. At the heart of this conflict lies a fundamental question about power and responsibility. Is Steffy justified in using her position to protect her family from what she perceives as danger, or has she crossed into tyranny fueled by unresolved trauma? From Steffy's perspective, history provides ample justification. Her life has been repeatedly upended by figures who brought violence, manipulation, and terror into her orbit. She has learned, through pain, that vigilance is survival. When she imagines Deacon's involvement with Taylor, she does not see romance, she sees vulnerability. Her fear is not abstract. It is visceral, informed by scars both visible and hidden. Yet there is another shadow looming over this situation, one that complicates Steffy's stance even further: Sheila Carter. The mere possibility that Taylor's relationship with Deacon could draw Sheila's attention terrifies Steffy, and not without reason. Sheila represents chaos incarnate, a force that has repeatedly proven immune to restraint or remorse. Steffy knows that if Sheila perceives Taylor as accessible through Deacon, harassment and danger are almost guaranteed to follow. In this context, Steffy's desperation to intervene becomes more understandable, though not necessarily more ethical. Taylor herself stands at the center of this storm, yet paradoxically is treated as if she lacks agency. Steffy's attempts to control her mother's romantic life stem from love and fear, but they also infantilize Taylor in ways Taylor herself may not accept. Taylor is not naive. She is a grandmother, a professional, and a woman who has survived her own share of trauma. Her choice to explore a relationship with Deacon is not impulsive, it is deliberate. She understands the risks, yet she also understands her own right to happiness. Being told, implicitly or explicitly, that she must be protected from her own decisions cuts deeply, even when that message comes from a daughter acting out of concern. This dynamic exposes the central irony of Steffy's actions. In her effort to protect her family, she risks becoming the very force that fractures it. By threatening hope and exerting control through fear, Steffy undermines the moral authority she believes she is defending. The truce collapses not because of romantic rivalry or fashion politics, but because trust has eroded beyond repair. Hope no longer sees Steffy as a partner in peace, but as an adversary willing to sacrifice fairness for control. As the tension escalates, the atmosphere within Forrester Creations grows oppressive. Employees sense the shift, the unspoken understanding that alliances are hardening and that loyalty may soon be tested. Hope for the future, once a symbol of renewal, becomes a bargaining chip in a war of wills. Hope's joy over the line's revival is overshadowed by the constant fear that it could all disappear overnight. For Hope, this is more than professional anxiety, it is existential. Her identity, her values, and her future feel suddenly precarious. The tragedy of this storyline lies in its inevitability. The ceasefire was never built on reconciliation, only restraint. It did not address the wounds beneath the rivalry, nor the fundamental differences in how Steffy and Hope view power, morality, and protection. When pressure mounted, the truce collapsed exactly as one might expect, yet with consequences far more severe than anyone anticipated. Threats replace dialogue. Authority replaces empathy. Fear replaces trust. In the end, the conflict raises a haunting question: when does protection become oppression, and when does love justify control? Steffy's actions force viewers to confront the uncomfortable reality that good intentions do not absolve harmful methods. Hope's resistance challenges the notion that peace can exist without equity. Ann Taylor's position reminds everyone that autonomy, once denied, leaves scars no less damaging than external threats. As this chapter unfolds in The Bold and the Beautiful, the collapse of the Steffy-Hope truce feels less like a sudden explosion and more like a long-delayed reckoning. The war was always coming. What remains uncertain is who will emerge stronger, who will be forced to sacrifice the most, and whether any of them will recognize that the greatest danger may not come from outside forces at all, but from the choices they make when fear is allowed to rule unchecked. The Bold and the Beautiful does not allow conflicts to fade quietly, and once the ceasefire between Steffy Forrester and Hope Logan collapses, it does not merely fracture, it detonates. The tension that once simmered beneath professional smiles now erupts into an accusation, so explosive that it rewrites every relationship in its blast radius. Steffy does not choose a private office or a discreet conversation to deliver her next move. She chooses exposure. In a calculated escalation, she accuses Hope of maintaining a secret, inappropriate relationship with Deke Sharp and declares, with chilling certainty, that the child Hope is carrying cannot possibly belong to her husband, but must be Deke's. This is not a threat disguised as concern. It is a public indictment designed to destroy credibility, motherhood, and identity in one stroke. For Steffy, this accusation is not born in a vacuum. It is the culmination of weeks of fear, suspicion, and a deepening conviction that Hope's moral compass is not as flawless as she presents it to be. Steffy has watched Hope move with increasing protectiveness around Deke, defending him not just as a brother, but as a man whose presence in her life seems to override reason. In Steffy's mind, patterns form quickly. Late conversations. Emotional intimacy framed as familial loyalty. A pregnancy that arrives at a moment of extreme emotional upheaval. To Steffy, these are not coincidences, they are signals. Her trauma has trained her to connect dots rapidly, sometimes ruthlessly, because hesitation has cost her safety before. When she speaks, she does so with the confidence of someone who believes she is exposing a dangerous truth before it causes irreversible harm. Hope experiences the accusation not as shock alone, but as a kind of psychological assault. To have her integrity questioned is painful, to have her pregnancy weaponized is devastating. Motherhood, for Hope, is sacred. It represents continuity, love, and redemption. Steffy's claim strips that meaning away and replaces it with suspicion and shame. The implication that she would betray her marriage and involve her brother in such a transgression cuts at the core of who Hope believes herself to be. Her immediate instinct is not rage, but disbelief, an almost paralyzing realization that Steffy is willing to annihilate her reputation to regain control. The power imbalance is unmistakable. Steffy is not merely a rival, she is an executive with influence over Hope's livelihood, public image, and professional future. By framing the accusation as a moral and ethical concern rather than a personal attack, Steffy positions herself as a reluctant whistleblower rather than an aggressor. The strategy is precise. If Hope denies too forcefully, she risks appearing defensive. If she remains silent, suspicion grows. Every response becomes a liability. This is not just an accusation. It is a trap designed to corner Hope into a no-win scenario. Deke Sharp is pulled into the center of the storm with a violence he never anticipated. Already stripped of his position at Forrester Creations, he now faces a far more dangerous threat, being labeled a predator within his own family. The accusation does not merely question his judgment, it criminalizes his presence in Hope's life. Deke understands immediately what Steffy is doing. By tying him to Hope's pregnancy, she transforms him from collateral damage into the alleged cause of moral decay. His attempts to defend himself are complicated by the very closeness Steffy exploits. The truth, that his bond with Hope is rooted in shared history and mutual protection, sounds dangerously thin against the narrative Steffy has constructed. As whispers spread, the atmosphere around Hope shifts dramatically. People who once saw her as the embodiment of integrity now hesitate, their glances lingering just long enough to suggest doubt. Hope for the future, already precarious, becomes radioactive. Investors question whether a brand built on values can survive a scandal involving incest-adjacent betrayal and paternity deception. The cruelty of Steffy's move lies in its timing. Hope is visibly pregnant, emotionally vulnerable, and professionally exposed. Steffy understands optics, and she understands that doubt alone can be as destructive as proof. The accusation forces Hope into an agonizing internal battle. Part of her wants to fight publicly, to scream the truth and demand respect. Another part fears that any escalation will only harm her unborn child. Stress, scrutiny, and public humiliation are not abstract concerns anymore, they are immediate risks. Hope begins to realize that Steffy is not trying to win an argument. She is trying to force submission. If Hope retreats, withdraws her support of Taylor and Deacon, distances herself from Deke, or steps back from her line, the pressure might ease. The realization is horrifying. Steffy has turned Hope's pregnancy into leverage. Steffy, meanwhile, experiences her own unraveling beneath the surface. Outwardly, she is composed, decisive, almost regal in her certainty. Inwardly, the cost of her actions gnaws at her. Accusing a pregnant woman of infidelity and betrayal is not a step she takes lightly. She tells herself this is about protection, about stopping another disaster before it begins. Her mind returns obsessively to the specter of Sheila Carter, the chaos that follows when boundaries are ignored and danger is underestimated. Steffy convinces herself that extreme claims justify extreme measures, that exposing Hope now is preferable to cleaning up blood later. Yet buried beneath that justification is a quieter fear. What if she is wrong, and this accusation becomes the unforgivable act that defines her? The family fractures rapidly. Conversations turn accusatory. Loyalties are tested. Some rally around Hope, recognizing the desperation in Steffy's escalation. Others, conditioned by years of scandal, hesitate to dismiss the claim outright. In this world, innocence has been betrayed too many times to be accepted without question. Hope's isolation deepens, not because she is guilty, but because uncertainty spreads faster than truth. Even those who believe her struggle to defend her publicly, aware that aligning themselves too firmly could draw Steffy's wrath. The emotional toll on Hope intensifies as she grapples with the possibility that the truth alone may not save her. Proof becomes essential, yet invasive. The idea of a paternity test looms like a violation of privacy and dignity. To submit would mean validating Steffy's authority to demand answers. To refuse would mean living under a cloud of suspicion. Hope is forced to confront a brutal reality. Her body has become a battleground in a war she did not start. The child she carries, once a symbol of hope and continuity, is now treated as evidence in a case against her. Deke's rage simmers dangerously close to the surface. He understands that Steffy's accusation is not just about Hope, it is about erasing him entirely. By casting him as the father, she ensures that his presence becomes intolerable, his intentions forever suspect. Yet Deke also recognizes that any outburst from him would reinforce Steffy's narrative. He is trapped in a role where silence looks like guilt and anger looks like confirmation. His helplessness mirrors Hope's, binding them together in shared devastation rather than the illicit bond Steffy claims exists. As the storyline advances, the stakes grow darker. The accusation does not merely threaten careers, it threatens mental and physical health. Stress fractures relationships that were already strained. Hope's trust in institutional fairness erodes, as she realizes how easily power can reshape truth. Steffy's grip tightens as she watches the effects of her words ripple outward, simultaneously vindicated by the chaos and unsettled by its magnitude. She has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, and the consequences will define her as much as they define Hope. At its core, this chapter is not about whether the accusation is true, but about how far someone will go when fear masquerades as righteousness. Steffy believes she is acting to prevent catastrophe. Hope knows she is being punished for refusing to bend. Between them lies a truth that will eventually surface, but not before immense damage is done. In the unforgiving world of the bold and the beautiful, truth is rarely enough on its own. It must survive power, perception, and pain. And as Steffy's accusation reshapes the battlefield, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. Even if Hope is proven innocent, some wounds will never fully heal, and the war between these two women has entered a phase where victory may cost more than either of them is prepared to lose.